recording this presentation as well. That will get uploaded in the next 24 to 48 hours to our LISSA YouTube page, and we will also make that available through our Facebook feed. So thank you for coming. Thank you, Erin, for this wonderful opportunity. We're all really looking forward to it. So without further ado, here's Erin.
Thank you. Also, for those of you who are not physically here, I have some handouts that I'm going to give everyone who is physically here, but I'm going to send, okay, I will send Morgan the copy of the sheet. It's a cheat sheet of all of the links to all of the tools we're going to be talking about and links to all the examples that I'm giving. I will send her a copy of this and she can distribute it to everyone else. So, pass those around. So thank you guys for having me. I'm Erin Lawrimore. I'm the University Archivist over in the University Libraries. So my job as University Archivist is essentially to collect, preserve, protect, talk about, promote, build exhibits about, and all sorts of other fun things related to university history. So you would have to be blind not to know that it's the 125th year of the university. The marketing is everywhere. So we've done a lot of work with that, and we've used some of these storytelling tools that I'm going to talk about to help in that promotion, and some of them we're actually just starting to use now. But the first thing, there we go. The first thing I wanted to start with is just kind of thinking about technology and storytelling. From what we're looking at here, there are kind of three main categories that I'm going to talk about when it comes to technology and storytelling. First is how do we use the tech to help gather stories, to kind of collect our thoughts, collect our materials, manage our materials. How do we use tech to distribute stories? So we're telling stories in new and interesting ways using these technologies. And how do we use these technologies to enhance our stories? So how do we go from basic storytelling to providing more interactivity and other types of things related to the stories? And how do we do it for free is the trick here. So when we say free, many of you have probably heard the phrase free as in kittens. That's what we're talking about here with most of these tools. They are free in that you don't have to pay a cost out of your wallet to use most of them in some way, shape, or form. They are not free in that you can have some trouble installing things. You often have to have either your own server or some place to host all of these things, depending on where you are. Some require more technology skills than others do, so you may have to ask people for help, and those people who provide help may not always do it for free. So again, if you are a master in terms of technology and have your own website and know everything there is to know about tech, they'll totally be free. But in other ways, they're also going to be free in that they're going to be hidden costs in many cases. But let's start with talking about some tools that are available for gathering stories. So these are going to be kind of like content management systems that are available for free for you to manage born digital or digitized images, scans of different types of materials and things like that. The first one I was going to talk about is Mukurtu, which is pronounced Mukurtu, but spelled M-U-K-U-R-T-U. It's a free mobile open source platform that was built specifically to help indigenous communities manage and share their cultural heritage data. It actually comes out of Washington State University. And one of the interesting things with Mukurtu, which is actually, I can't remember which tribe now, but it's a term for kind of like a bag to save things in from one of the northwestern tribes that's represented in some of their work. But the thing that Mukurtu does that pretty much every other content management system doesn't do is it allows you to create and provide access based on group membership. So for instance, it's used in a project called the Plateau Peoples Web Portal. The font's really tiny, so you probably can't see it. But one of the things that this web portal does is that it kind of divides up the materials that are being provided online by the tribal group, and it allows you to provide access by tribal group. So here we're looking at the Spokane tribe, and you can't really see it, but in tiny font under where it says protocols, it actually allows you to have people request access to that. And so it allows the tribes to kind of use their normal protocols for who could access materials, and allows you to kind of filter through that. So again, it's based on these Native American protocols, but it could be applied in other situations too. You're going out and doing oral history interviews in a community, and you've gathered these photos, and the community is very adamant that some of these photos are for them only. They only want members of their own community to be able to see it. Makutu allows you to kind of provide that access on a cold basis by community group. The probably better known option of these free platforms for gathering stories is Omeka. Omeka is out of George Mason University's History and New Media Center. It's a free, flexible, open source web publishing platform. If any of y'all are familiar with DSpace or Fedora, it's a really lightweight version of DSpace and Fedora. For both of these tools, I would definitely say this is not your DSpace can serve as your content management system and keep all your preservation files as well as access files in some situations, depending on how you have it organized. Omeka and Makutu both are more access focused. So you're not necessarily going to use this as your digital preservation platform, but it's really good for serving up the files to folks online. Omeka is definitely a free like kittens option. There are multiple Omeka options that are available. One is Omeka S, which is actually relatively new, which is a downloadable, you install it yourself, and it's mainly built for institutions. There's Omeka Classic, which is the same thing. You download it and install it on your own server. And it's kind of more for classroom use if you're a faculty member who's going to have students do Omeka-based projects. If you're a historian yourself who wants to do this, Omeka Classic is what can work for you. And they also have a hosted Omeka option, which runs Omeka Classic, and it's omeka.net. And that's where you get your other free option. So both S and Classic are free for you to download, but unless you have skills with LAMP development, it can be a little bit tricky to manage. So omeka.net actually offers, which you can't really see there, 4 different service plan options for fees, and it staggers based on how much storage you want and how much customization you want to be available to you. But there is a free option. So the free option is for 20 gigabytes of data that you can store. You have a limited number of things that you can do with it and ways that you can customize it, but it's there and it's free and it's available for pretty much anyone to use. So Omeka allows you to upload and add metadata, upload images, documents, PDFs, any kind of file, and add metadata. It runs on Dublin Core, so your basic Dublin Core metadata. The free version is the basic Dublin Core metadata option. You can go with the more extended Dublin Core if you have some of the one of the paid plans or you install it yourself. But it's the same Dublin Core that you're using for anything else. If you did have something like Content DM or Fedora, you can actually export out from there the metadata and use files and import into Omeka if you want to use Omeka for smaller collections or for other purposes. So you've gathered up information. How are you going to tell the stories now? How are you going to distribute these stories, and what kind of cool tools exist for you to be able to do that? Back to Omeka. One of the plugins, so Omeka runs off of a huge series of plugins that you can choose to add to your Omeka instance or not. And one that's available even in the lowest level free option is Exhibit Builder. And yes, it's one word for some reason. So again, it's a plugin option. Customization options for the Exhibit Builder differ based on the level of Omeka that you have. I think you only have 2 or 3 options in terms of how it looks, how the exhibits are going to look in the free trial, and you have like 32 if you pay the highest level plan. But you can build some really cool online exhibits. This is one that I really like a lot of Riot Girl zines from the 90s. This is a student project at the University of Michigan. And that gives you an example of a very, honestly, crafting that from your content that's already in Omeka is pretty darn simple to do. You can build individual pages that bring together lots of different documents, and each of the documents are going to link out to the individual item page with all that Dublin Core metadata that you put in. And honestly, within the back end of Omeka, you're just building an exhibit in a very basic way. You're giving it a title, you're giving it a description, you're picking an image for the title page, and then when you go in, you're just kind of building block by block down the page. You could choose a text block to go at the top, followed by some images, followed by an image on the left-hand side and a text block on the right-hand side. All of these options you just kind of build down the line. One thing I will tell you, though, if you're going to play around with this, it's probably best to, at least for me, on paper, but if you're really good in your head, sketch out what you want the page to look like, because switching from an all-text block to a text with an image on the left block is copying and pasting. You have to do that. You can't just automatically kind of drag and drop. So it's a little bit more complicated than drag and drop, but honestly, for a free exhibit building tool, especially if you're kind of handing this out to people who aren't super duper tech savvy, it's a really good option. I'm actually using it this semester. I'm doing an honors college course on the history of the university, and each of the students, most of whom are freshmen, and none of whom, interestingly enough, are in the humanities, are all going to be using Omeka to build their exhibit. Scalar is another option. Scalar is actually more text-heavy than Omeka. So Omeka is what you kind of think of when you think of online exhibits. It's pretty pictures with some explanatory text. Scalar is lots of text with some pretty pictures. Think like an enhanced book. Like if you were looking at an ebook that had really cool enhanced features where you could click on words and bring up audio, or click on words and bring up text. Scalar can do that. This is an exhibit built in, or it's actually a print book that they created kind of an accompanying ebook version called The Nicest Kids in Town. It's about American Bandstand. But you can't really see it, but if you look at the text in the right-hand side, you'll see that there's some that's in a light blue as opposed to being in black. If you were to hover over and click on that text, it brings up one of the images, the relevant image on the left-hand side. So you can listen to the Milk Grant sales pitch when they're talking about the Milk Grant, which I can't say, Milk Grant sales pitch in the text itself. So it's really just kind of enhanced reading in some way, shapes, or forms. The other tool that I wanted to mention, because I don't think people often think about it in this category, is social media. All types of social media can serve as really good storytelling tools, depending on the story that you're telling and who you want to reach with it. The example that you see in front of you actually is a Twitter feed that the Massachusetts Historical Society has set up. And every single day, they're tweeting out a snippet from John Quincy Adams' diary. And it's, whatever he was doing on that day in I can't remember how far back they're going, but, it's a good way to kind of bring a person like John Quincy Adams into the 21st century, to show the relevance, tell the story, make him more into a real person as opposed to kind of a person on a platform somewhere. But, people have done the same types of things with other bots that they've built that tweet out, like the National Archives, for instance, has today's document, where every day they just tweet out some document from the National Archives. And you can string those together to tell a story, and they often will do that using hashtags across all of the different National Archives institutions. So the National Archives, as well as all of the presidential libraries, for instance, might share a document with a single theme using a hashtag that all come together to tell one big story. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, the lowest hanging fruit, but could be highly effective storytelling tool that's free, as in kittens, because social media takes time. So you've kind of got stuff, you've got some stories. What do you do if you've got all these stories that you already have and you just want to make them better? You want to use these free tech tools to enhance your stories and make it so that they're more interactive and more engaging for people who are looking for things online now. One awesome resource for these types of tools is the Night Lab, which is out of Northwestern in Chicago's journalism school. They actually have built a ton of tools that are, to be honest, meant to be for journalists to use in online storytelling, but they're super easily adaptable to any kind of digital storytelling, including sharing historical knowledge. They're also really cool in that they can pull resources from a variety of places online to tell this single story. So if you have photos that you've put in Flickr for storage, for instance, it can go into Flickr and pull out the tools and show it kind of in context along with YouTube videos that you have. It just kind of can pull things easily from different bits and places. All of their tools can. But I'm going to tell you about a good number of their tools. This isn't all of their tools, but these are the ones that I've found most useful in historical digital storytelling. We use most of them in some way, shape, or form in university archives, and most of them are pretty darn easy to use. This is the easiest to use. This is Juxtapose. Juxtapose JS. They all end with JS, which means it is just JavaScript. It just indicates that it runs by JavaScript. And Juxtapose is basically you're taking two images and it puts a slider bar in the middle. You can go back and forth and see then and now. So honestly, if you look out the window here, this is College Avenue. College Avenue on the left, College Avenue on the right. And you can slide them back and forth to see, you know, how it has changed, including being paved. Juxtapose, basically you have two URLs, and it can run off a box too. So that's the other thing it can pull images from is Google Drive or a Dropbox account. You just have two URLs for two images that are publicly available online. You do have to, you will have to do some Photoshop magic to make it so that the images line up. But once you kind of have all of that done and the images are available online, it's literally as easy as here's one URL, here's a second URL, go. It gives you a preview embed at the bottom, and then what it does is it actually spits out an iframe, and you can just copy that iframe and paste it onto any website. It's like you don't have to do anything to tweak it. And it works in any of the platforms. So if you're building an Omeka exhibit, for instance, and you want to include one of these in the Omeka exhibit, all you do is copy paste. That simple. And it's a really cool visual way of showing change. StoryMap.js is another one that I really, really enjoy. So StoryMap is a tool that allows you to chart changes, like travels across a geographic zone. So if you have a map and you have data points, and the data points are showing someone traveling or movement across the map, or something happened at a certain point and you want someone to move along with that, StoryMap does that and does it really easily. So this is a map of Western migration, manifest destiny. You can see that when you kind of click on one of the data points, it brings up more detailed information about that data point. And you can see on the right-hand side the arrows going back and forth. You can either kind of click along the map as you like and skip and choose, or you can use the arrows and it actually has someone follow you down the trail. So that actually guides you down the trail. It's driven through Google Drive. It actually brings up a document where you are basically, again, providing the data point. You can't really see it, but in the middle of the section right underneath the big global display is a box where you literally are just typing in an address. city, state, same way you would populate something in like Google Maps. That's what it's running off of. So you can type in, your home address, and it's going to bring that up, find it on the map, and pinpoint that as like spot number 1 on your story. You can add a headline, you can add additional photos or video or audio that helps illustrate that single point, and then you just move to the next one. It's pretty darn simple to use, and just like Juxtapose, it spits out an iframe. You embed it on your website, you're good to go. You don't have to do tweaking or anything. Timeline JS is another of the Night Lab magic tools that I really, really like. Everyone likes to build a timeline. Timelines are great for showing historical data, but timelines are a pain if you don't have like web programming skills. So Timeline JS actually runs off of essentially like a Google spreadsheet. It's not essentially. You download a Google spreadsheet template and you fill it in. And that's it. You can include photos that are relevant. You can use HTML in the text, so if you wanted to link out to something. You can't really see this here, but so this is our timeline of the chancellors, presidents and chancellors at UNCG. And it has the photo of whoever it was. It has a text blurb, a few sentences about who they were. But then it just says, for more information, see our online encyclopedia, and links out to it. What you also probably can't see very well is that under the picture is a scrolling bar. That's the actual timeline where you can scroll through and skip and click on different data points. And you can, again, use the arrows at the top to do that too. But it's, again, literally a spreadsheet. If you can fill out a spreadsheet, you can create a pretty awesome timeline using Timeline JS. There's some weird little quirks to it. You obviously have to get the data in the right category on the spreadsheet. There are options for simple customization. If you had really great skills, you could make it really fancy looking. But you can adjust how big the timeline is in terms of height and width. One thing I will say, though, that's a kind of a caveat to this one, and they actually have this caveat on their website, too. Timeline JS does a good job if you're kind of looking at a story that has about 20 data points or fewer. Once you get past about 20, maybe 25 if they're spread out enough, data points, it gets really hard to look at. The bar at the bottom, the timeline bar at the bottom. So what we've actually been doing with this is, instead of thinking of one singular university history timeline that's literally 125 years in one place, we're building a number of separate stories. So we have one timeline of presidents and chancellors, one timeline of provosts, one timeline that's the history of nursing. So we're doing kind of mini timelines. I will say that we're doing this with I want to say the knowledge, but it's more with our fingers crossed, that one day, if we did want to kind of combine them all together into a mega timeline, and we had someone who had the time to build us a fancy front end that could pull it all together in a more visually appealing way than Timeline JS allows with that many data points, at the very least, our data is normalized. All of the data is going to be normalized by these spreadsheets. Merge them all together. Magic. So again, that's the fingers crossed plan for that. So as I mentioned before, there are other Night Lab goodies that you could actually use that I haven't used them yet, but SoundSite JS is really cool for inline audio. So if you're writing a story and you have, say, an oral history clip of someone saying the quote that you're quoting in the article that you're writing, highlight it with SoundSite JS. It actually will come up as a clickable, the audio plays when you click on it. And again, that one is literally pretty much as simple as you have an audio file, you have where you want it to go, you type it in, and you go. And that's it. They do have two that are in beta development that I'm kind of jazzed about, especially the first one, Scene VR, which is not JS because it's virtual reality, yay. It's augmented reality, and so you actually would be able to create VR stories using Scene VR. Again, it's still in beta, so I don't know what the back end of that's going to look like. I don't know how complicated it's going to be, but based on all of the other Night Lab stuff, I'm going to guess it's not going to be rocket science to do. But we'll see. And Storyline JS is another one. So Storyline JS is really cool because you're actually taking graphed data. So a chart that shows the increase in the student population here at UNCG for over the 125 years. And what you can do is plot points on that and describe them in detail. So, you know, we had a spike in enrollment in 1964. Why? That's when we became UNCG and not Women's College. Or 63, sorry. And so that's, you know, that's a tool that's going to allow you to do that and kind of tell those stories in a more detailed way. You know, graphs and charts, some people love graphs and charts are lovely for conveying certain information, but they aren't really good for telling the stories behind the data. And they can hide a lot of stories behind data. And so Storyline JS kind of gives you that option for taking that graphed data information and talking about it more. So once we leave the Night Lab, there are some other really awesome tools that exist that also kind of help enhance data in different ways and enhance stories in different ways. Neatline is actually a suite of plugins that go into Omeka, but only for the installed version. So if you are using the free hosted version of Omeka, you can't use Neatline. In fact, if you're using the super expensive paid version of Omeka, you still can't use Neatline. You have to have it installed on your own machine. But it kind of connects maps, narratives, and timelines. And so I'll show you. This is a map. This is the Battle of Chancellorsville. And you can see on the right-hand side, there are data points that are a date and a blurb. And the date and the blurb will skip you around that map. Or you can click around the map and hit those data points and learn what the bits and pieces are. But one of the important things to keep in mind, you know, I'm not a big map person. I don't like maps that much. But one of the other things that it does is it kind of uses, map can be used in a very broad sense in this as any kind of image that you can trace a thing on it and point to it. So what I'm hoping to use Neatline for instance, so many of you have probably been to Starbucks here on campus. And when you're waiting on your drink, there's a picture in the Starbucks area that's all of the first faculty of the university. Neatline, okay, so that's not a map as we normally think about it, but Neatline would allow us to trace each faculty member, have this image so that when you click on a certain person, you click on Charles Duncan McKeever, our founding president, in that picture, it brings up his biography, detailed information about him. You click on all of the different faculty members, it brings up all the different information about each of them. So again, while it's map focused, it's not really just maps, and it has much broader use. This is one Brandy knows a lot about. The oral history metadata synchronizer, not the greatest name for a tool. It's not very exciting. It's OHMS is the abbreviation. This is out of the Louis B. Nunn Center at Kentucky. It's for enhancing oral history interviews, so audio or video oral history interviews. What it allows you to do is go in and add timestamps to the interview, so you can mark the interview in the transcript as this is the word spoken at the 1-minute mark, this is the word spoken at the 2-minute mark. You can skip through a transcript easier that way without having to listen, find a word, and skip back. And if you've ever had to do that, that is a real pain to have to do. But it also allows you to index the interviews. So you can indicate to your researcher, this is the chunk of the interview when they're talking about their favorite beer in North Carolina, which is the example we're going to be using. And so you can skip to that part, and if that's the only part you're interested in, you don't have to listen to the rest of the interview. You don't have to skim the transcript. You don't even have to have a transcript. you can index it in that way so that you can skip around really easily and navigate it. It's a web-based application with an OMS viewer. So you can install your OMS viewer in Omeka to provide access to it. You can install your OMS viewer anywhere else on a website. It basically spits out an XML file, or and you just take the XML file, and once the OMS viewer is installed, add it to the right file folder on your computer. That's it. So this is an example of indexing. This is an interview that Brandy did with Calder Pryor, who's the brewer, head brewer and one of the co-owners over at Pryor Brewing downtown. This is part of our Well-Crafted NC project focused on beer and brewing in downtown Greensboro. You can see on the left-hand side, it's all of the different indexing points, different bits and pieces that he's listening to. So you don't have to listen to Calder talk about every little bit and piece if all you're interested in is Calder talking about the creative process of brewing beer, for instance. We don't yet have transcripts for these interviews. There are captions in the YouTube, and you can see it's pulling from YouTube, so you don't have to have a fancy web server or anything for the video files. But we're able to kind of give this kind of broken up, easier to navigate access to the oral history interview stories, even without a transcript. If you did have the transcript, you can see on the right-hand side kind of the toggle button that's there. You toggle between indexing and transcript. When it toggles over to transcript, you can do a full text search of the transcript. So if you want to find the first place where he says beer, you could skip to that and automatically skip to that point in the interview. Or if you wanted to, again, skip to where he's talking about creative process and uses the phrase creative process, you can do that in the transcript. It's much easier to navigate than a PDF document transcript of an hour-long interview or listening to him talk for an hour. The back end of it is really simple to use. Again, it's a web-based tool. Kentucky keeps all of the web-based stuff on their server, so you honestly just write Doug Boyd, who's the head of the Nunn Center, an email and say, hey, Doug, I want to use this, and he gives you a login. And once you have the login, if you're an administrator, you can provide other people access on different levels. So you could be the administrator while someone else is just creating transcripts and editing the files. It has a number of categories, and it changes color based on the status. So there's a color, there's a separate color for nothing has been created, something has been uploaded but not checked, something has been uploaded and is finished but needs QA check, QA has been performed and it's ready to go, and it's been exported out. All of those are different colors, and you can kind of trace it really easily just visually looking at the web application. One more tool I wanted to talk about is Scribe. So Scribe is a crowdsourcing transcription tool. It's really great if you have handwritten documents, or I always love this phrase because it makes it really nice, OCR resistant text. Basically anything that's not written and wasn't typed in very, very basic typewriter font is to many degrees OCR resistant. It kind of has multi-layered workflow that helps ensure accuracy. So what I mean by that is when you have uploaded Scribe, the Scribe tool, you have someone log in, the first thing that you're going to have somebody do with a document is use the Scribe tool to kind of square off, draw a square around whatever you're asking for. So if there's a field for name, and you want people to transcribe the name in 75 documents, the first thing that the first person to volunteer would do is go in and draw a square around where all the names are. The second thing somebody's going to do is type out what that name is. They're going to do the transcription. 3 people are going to do that. If all 3 of them 100% agree, cool, you're done. Yay, it's transcribed. If there's one person who by one letter differs from the other 2, it goes to a third level of verification, where on the third level of verification, you're going to have yet another person go in. You're going to offer up 3 options you know, which one do you think this is? And they're going to pick one of the three, or have the option of typing in yet another fourth tool. And so, you know, you kind of have backups and backups and backups and people who are doing that quality control for you. It's always good to kind of do some by yourself too, but there are layers that kind of help you make sure that things are a bit more accurate than if it was just, I sat down at a computer and started typing out a bunch of stuff. So an awesome use of this tool is from the New York Public Library. It's called Immigrant City. And basically what they do is they have you go in and transcribe real estate records. So a lot of these are pages that are forms, but the writing is handwriting. So it's a mix of printed text and handwritten, which is really, really hard to OCR and get anything reliable out of. And so they have this tool that they're just offering up to anybody who wants to log into their website. You do have to create a login, and you can go in and do transcription work for them or do verification work on transcription for them. They don't necessarily do this on this site, but one of the things that I've seen a lot of other people to do is I've seen a lot of other people kind of turn this into and I don't like the word gamification very much because I find it hard to say, but they've made it a game. You get badges, you get different things for different levels. And so depending on who your audience is that you're hitting with the tool and kind of whether you have a ready-made audience for a crowdsourcing project or not, all of these things can be really, really helpful to think about. So there are a number of resources that kind of you can help with for these. Most of these tools have active developer communities, and I should have put quotes around easy to follow based on how easily you follow technical directions, documentation. They are all open source, so they all do have those active communities, some more than others. There are a couple of sites though that I actually don't think I put them on the handout sheet that I made, but two sites that kind of can help guide when you're thinking about digital projects, digital humanities style projects, for the big picture. So when you're thinking about planning the project, scoping the project, deciding which tool is the best tool to use for the project, sustainability of the project, always an important thing to think about. devdh.org is a really good website to look at. That's what that one kind of focuses on, is that big picture. But if you want to look at the nitty-gritty details, you want to learn how to, you know, have your own LAMP instance so that you can host Omeka all by yourself. There's a website called the Programming Historian. It's programminghistorian.org. That's awesome. And they, honestly, it starts you with like how to build how to sign up for a WordPress site. It goes from that all the way up to much, much more complicated things. And it also gives you honest levels of difficulty you may face when using any kind of tools. It'll say, is this beginner level, intermediate level, advanced level? It will tell you whether the task you want to do is one that you feel you might be able to do versus whether it's one that you might have to have some help with. So with all of that said, my corgis have to be in every presentation. Do you guys have any questions about some of the tools, some of the things we're using at UNCG? One of the things I do want to mention, though, is, you know, I've mentioned all of these tools. I've talked about all these tools. We've used a number of, but not all of them, in the library. The library currently, like as of this exact moment, doesn't offer support for any of these tools. Again, you've got the active developer communities that you can go to. But within 12 to 18 months, we'll say, unless something horrible happens, we're anticipating that a number of them, not all of them, but a number of them, including Omeka and a lot of the Night Lab tools, and Neatline, if I have my way, and OHMS will offer support to people who are on campus who are interested in using them. What that support will be, again, 12 to 18 months out, so don't really know at this point. But coming down the pipe, you know, there will be something. in the meanwhile, again, some are used by us, some aren't used by us. I'm happy to talk with folks, but I'm not an expert in using many of these. I've just played around with them. And playing around with them, honestly, is the best way to learn any of them. I will go ahead and say that. You can sit through a 3-hour workshop on something, and unless you are putting your hands on it, you're not really going to take away what you probably would need to take away. But do you guys have any questions? Any types of projects that maybe like we didn't cover a tool that it could help with?
I think of a lot of projects that have already done.
Yeah, well, like I said, between the Night Lab tools and Omeka, those are the two that honestly, if you got those two down, you could pretty much do, you could do an awful lot with either of those. And both of those can be done for free. The Night Lab tools really are simple, really are quite easy to use. And so I definitely, and the iframe that they pop out is easy to plop into a WordPress site. And have it reproduced there, so or any other kind of website you might have. So those are far and away probably the simplest of the lot, at least in terms of getting the data up and ready. Someone mentioned Zooniverse. Zooniverse is actually Zooniverse works with. They're actually behind Scribe. They collaborated with maybe University of Virginia, I can't remember now, on Scribe, the transcription tool. So Zooniverse is basically a place where you can go to find a bunch of crowdsourcing transcription tools. And yeah, they had a lot behind, and they actually use, that's what they use as Scribe. Cool. Yes, Brandy has a question.
Resources for translating exhibits into other languages.
Translating exhibits into other languages. There is a plugin in Omeka. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if it's available in the free. I honestly doubt it's in the free, like, hosted option. It may be available in one of the, it may be available in the download it yourself free option if you add the plugin. But there's a plugin built into it, and I don't think it's any language. I think it's limited languages, but I know that that one does exist. I've never used it. And Omeka, or OHM, sorry, OHM has added. I don't know, I don't remember a lot of details because, again, we haven't used it. But there is a, in the most recent, which I mean by like last month, upgrade of OHM, there was support for other languages, but I can't remember what they meant by support, whether it's, I doubt it's actually translating. It may just be supporting other languages in terms of the description being provided. I'm not sure. Any other questions? Well, if not, again, I'll send Morgan the free tools for digital storytelling list that I whipped up. And if anybody has any questions that occur after the fact, my email address is there beside the corgis. So you're welcome to email me, and I'm happy to provide the knowledge that I have, as well as contacts to people who know a whole lot more about many of these tools. Thank you. Okay, cool. Can do that. That is easy.